Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Professor, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. I am the principal investigator of this project. We are now going to listen to a discussion of a module from the course Introduction to Pragmatics and Discourse Analysis. The coordinators of the course are Professor Imtiaz Hasnan, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh, and Professor Rajneesh Arora, English and Foreign Languages University, Lucknow campus. Listen to the discussion. The name of the module is Speech Event Analysis, and the authors of this module are 1. Sayyid Gurfam Hashmi from the Department of Linguistics, Aligarh Muslim University, and Dr. Ramanand J. Kumar Upadhyay, Assistant Professor, Department of English, GLA University, Mathura. Listen to the discussion.
Today we will discuss the module Speech Event Analysis from the course Introduction to Pragmatics and Discourse Analysis. As the title of the module suggests, we will try to understand the concept of speech event analysis in this video. Delheim suggested that any communicative use of language or speech event is constituted and analyzed in 8 distinct factors, each associated with a different function. We'll analyze a speech event in this video. The present analysis comprises a speech event consisting of people from 2 socio-culturally and politically different communities. So this speech event analysis is of an English movie titled A Passage to India, based on E.M. Forster's novel by the same name. We'll be taking a 2-minute scene from this movie for our analysis. So the text that we are going to analyze begins with a gavel pounding in line number 1 and it ends with a laughter in line number 14. So this will be the particular text portion which we'll be considering for our speech event analysis. The text is transcribed using simplified notations for conversation analysis. The analysis is done after each speech act. Sometimes 2 or more speech acts appear to be so inextricably linked to each other that it is fit to analyze them in continuation. The setting is a court of city magistrate in district Chandrapur of colonial India. The participants includes a judge, lawyers, police officer, accused, victim, audience, court attendants and clerks. The instrumentalities is made up of speech, the message form, which includes spoken English, gestures, facial expressions, vocalic nonverbal and nonverbal speech like hammer and gavel pounding. So, and the topic of this particular case is that the case is against an Indian named Dr. Aziz, and he is accused of violating the dignity of a young English girl, Miss Quested. So before going through the analysis, it is suggested that you watch this particular video clip so as to understand the analysis better. I hope you all have watched the video. So underlying the event is a complex set of socially recognized rules which can be most easily recognized by considering possible breaches of them. For example, in the video it can be seen that the audience stand up on the gavel pounding and the police officer stands up and talks upon seeing the judge nod his head. Now just imagine what would have happened if these cues weren't conveyed. Imagine what if the audience still continued to talk even after the pounding of gavel. Or imagine what if the police officer did not understood the meaning of judge's nod and he, instead of standing and talking, he just sat there listening to the audience. What would have happened? So we'll discuss more on this. Before going into the analysis, let's try to have an understanding of speech event and speech situation. A speech event is embedded into a hierarchically higher unit speech situation and is itself composed of a smaller units called speech acts. So one example Delheims gave of a speech situation, an event and a speech act is that um, imagine a party, and that party is a speech situation. You have many people in the party, many topics are being talked about, and so imagine that a party is a speech situation, and the conversation that happens during the party is a speech event, and a joke within the conversation is a speech act. So you have a wider scenario that is a speech situation, and the conversation in that speech situation is a speech event, and the part of that conversation is a speech act. Now, interviews, buying and selling goods in a shop, sermons, lectures, and informal conversation are examples of speech events. In this analysis of the court of the city magistrate provides a speech situation, and this speech situation is made up of several smaller speech events which we'll discuss later. Each speech event can be described and analyzed ethnographically in terms of its components, which Delheims captures in his mnemonic device, that is speaking. Ethnography of communicative event is a description of all the components that are relevant in understanding how the particular communicative event achieves its objectives. So Delheims identified 16 components that need to be distinguished in speech event analysis under ethnographic approach to communication. We'll not be discussing all the 16 components, but we'll have a look at the important components of speech. So first we have the setting and scene. Setting refers to the time and place, that is, the concrete physical circumstances in which speech takes place. Scene, on the contrary, refers to the abstract psychological setting or the cultural definition of the occasion. So basically, setting refers to the time and place, that is, the concrete physical circumstances in which the speech takes place, and scene, on the contrary, refers to the abstract psychological setting or the cultural definition of the occasion. Within a particular setting, of course, participants are free to change scenes as they change the level of formality, that is, they could be angry, they could be laughing, or they could be just passing a joke. So all this can happen within the scene. Now, if you're looking at our speech event analysis the example, this particular scene in the court, this speech event analysis takes the court of the city magistrate as its setting. And the event is situated in the district of Chandrapur in colonial India. The time is in day, probably some part of morning before noon. On one side of the judge's seat was a door labelled magistrate's office, and the door on the other side is labelled jailer's office. A shield with a sign of the British Empire was on the wall above the judge's seat. So the court proceedings make up the scene. However, during the prosecution's arguments, scenes are found to shift in order to relate the past events. Next important component is participants. Himes argues that threefold division of a speaker, hearer, and the topic postulates a dyad, that is, speaker, hearer, or source, destination, sender, receiver, and or an addresser, addressee situation. However, there are certain situations that require specification of three participants, that is, addresser, addressee, hearer, source, spokesman, addressees, addresses, etc. The participants include various combination of speaker, listener, addresser, addressee, or sender, receiver. Now, in this particular scene again, that is the scene in the court, the participants in this speech event are we have a judge and a city magistrate, a senior police officer, the accused, prosecution, and defense. Next component is ends. Ends refers to the conventionally recognized and expected outcomes of an exchange, and it also refers to the personal goals that participants seek to accomplish on particular occasions. So the former is what Himes calls as outcomes and the latter as goals. So outcomes is the conventionally recognized and expected outcome of an exchange, and then we have goals, that is the personal goals that participants seek to accomplish on particular occasion. So both outcome and goals, they may not be in harmony all the time. In fact, they often conflict each other. Emphasizing this demarcation between outcomes and goals, Himes says that the purpose of a speech event from the community's standpoint may differ from those of the participants, as in the event of litigations where both parties desire to win. Similarly, a trial in the court of law, as is the case in the present analysis, has a recognizable social end in view. But the various participants, that is the judge, jury, prosecution, defense, accused, witnesses, and audience have different personal goals. For example, so for the judge, his goal is to uphold the law, to determine the truth, to evaluate the acceptability and validity of the arguments by the prosecution and the defense, to establish guilty, to establish quantum of punishment, and to pronounce a sentence. So that is a goal of the judge. And when we look at the prosecution, his goal is to argue and impress the judge so as to establish the accused guilty and to secure maximum sentence for the accused. And in case of the defense lawyer, his goal is to argue and impress the judge so as to establish the innocence of the accused and to secure the acquittal of the accused. And when we're looking at the audience, we can see two kinds of audience. We have the Indian audience and the British audience. So the Indians would like to see the accused be pronounced innocent and be acquitted. The British would like to see the accused be pronounced guilty and his subsequent conviction. So as we mentioned earlier, both outcome and guilty will not always be in harmony, and they are often conflicting each other. Next we have act sequence. Act sequence refers to the precise words used, how they are used, and the relationship of what is said to the actual topic at hand. So act sequence refers to the precise words used in a particular speech event and how they are used and the relationship of what is said to the actual topic at hand. The former is labeled as the message form and the latter as message content. Many serious errors occur when there is a mismatch between form and content. And this is because we ignore the fact that, quote unquote, how something is said is part of what is said. So for example, you cannot be apologetic or mourning while putting a broad grin on your face. People will not buy that. Okay, if you are sincerely apologetic, then you will have that kind of an expression which convinces the other person that you are genuinely apologetic about what has happened or you're genuinely sorry. Or for example, you cannot be talking out loud or you cannot be laughing at a funeral, and this if your action does not go by the event, then it contradicts. Another important component of speech is key. Key refers to the tone, manner, or spirit in which a particular message is conveyed. So, key refers to the tone, manner, or spirit in which a particular message is conveyed. Key may enter the analysis non-verbally by participants' behavior, gesture, posture, or even the kind of clothes they wear. Delheim stressed that when it is in conflict with the overt content of an act, it often overrides the latter. So, in this analysis, there are instances when the key is in conflict with the overt content of the speech act, which we'll see later. Then we have instrumentalities. Instrumentalities refer to the choice of channel, for example, oral, written, telegraphic, or other medium of transmission of speech. It also refers to the actual forms of speech employed, such as language, dialect, code, or register that is chosen. Formal language, written, or legal language is one example of instrumentality. Now, when you look at the particular speech event that we are analyzing, you can see a variety of instrumentalities. For example, you can see different kinds of verbal speech. That is, we can see spoken English, written English, and we can see the writings in Latin, court documents, files, and books. Also, we can see non-verbal acts such as eye movement, facial expression, gaze, body posture, etc. Non-speech sounds like gavel and hammer pounding, visual semiotics like statue of justice, union jack, shields, etc. And dresses like uniforms of police, lawyers, judges, and the civilian clothes in which the audiences have come. So all these are instrumentalities that can be seen in a particular speech event. Another important component of speech is norms of interaction and interpretation. So, as we know, norms of interaction refers to the specific behaviors and properties that attach to speaking. That one, for example, one must not interrupt while others are speaking, or maybe let's say you're attending a church mass and you want to convey something. You just don't shout it out loud, but instead you whisper, you convey it very silently. So there are certain norms that you're expected to follow in certain situations. So norms must be observed while paying a visit to a place of worship, attending an academic event, an exhibition, theater, or a political gathering, and other situations. So you're expected to behave in a particular way at a particular place. Norms of interpretation refer to how the norms of interaction may be viewed by someone who does not share them. This may lead to misunderstandings or a complete breakdown in communication. There are similarly different interpretations associated in different cultures with loudness, silence, gaze return, and so on. Next, we have genre. Genre refers to clearly demarcated types of utterances that depend on the kind of speech event one is engaged in. Proverbs, riddles, sermons, prayers, lectures, and editorials each represent distinct genres fit for particular occasions. And in the particular speech event that we are analyzing here, it uses mostly legal English with serious case. Sometimes it includes sarcasm and mocking as well. Now we will coherently analyze the speech event from the movie A Passage to India. We'll do a line by line analysis, and so here the first line is of gavel pounding. So the attendant in the courtroom is pounding the gavel on the table thrice. So what does this mean, and what is the importance of this act in this particular speech event? We'll see that. Now, a servant standing in the court pounds the gavel. It is a form of non-verbal communication which has a serious legal key. This communicative act may be analyzed within both instrumentality as well as act sequence, with gavel pounding forming the form of communication, while content to which it is related is an announcement of the arrival of the judge so that the things fall to order. The typical norm realized in this process is the order to rise as a show of respect to the judge. The norm is concurred by all the participants. Apparently, there seems no mismatch in the expectation to follow this norm. Although one section of the participants, that is the Indians, they might probably not like to rise at the arrival of the judge, but still they do concur with the norm, possibly so as not to offend the other participants or be accused to challenge the institutional authority of the court. Now we'll move on to the second sentence, that is the city magistrate saying, "Thus is a good man, Mrs. Turton." Now the city magistrate is an interested party to the case. He uses spoken English as instrumentality with serious key. The norm of addressing a married English lady with the title Mrs. is adhered to. The key used is serious, but the form of act sequence does not literally convey the message content. It is used to satisfy the concern of Mrs. Turton that his absence as a judge today might influence the outcome of the trial. Mrs. Turton, Ronnie and Miss Quested are the participants. Now this speech act is in reference to the previous speech event. Now we'll move on to the third sentence, that is the judge nodding to the police officer. The judge, the deputy to the city magistrate, is officiating the business today. The instrumentalities comprises of papers, documents, files and books on his large desk. And by nodding, he uses a non-verbal action with serious key as a message form, as well as one of the instrumentality to order the police officer to rise and produce the argument. The other participants comprise the audience. The norm inherent in this speech act is adhered to by the police officer as he takes the cue and rise. Next, we have the police officer saying, "Thank you, sir." So, conforming to the norm of the previous speech act, the police officer rises and produces his arguments. He uses spoken English with serious key as the instrumentality. A slight bow is also used redundantly along with the speech as a mark of respect and gratitude in honor of the judge. No other instrumentalities are used. In the domain of speech, the message form "Sir" is used as title of the address in English to someone who is higher in rank of authority. This message form also encapsulates the norm, as it is considered an expression of gratitude and formula to begin the argument in many institutional settings, including the court of law. There are no mismatches between form and content and the norms of the various participants. So everything is followed and everything is perfectly fine until now. Again, the fifth sentence is spoken by the police officer. So he starts with, "On April 3rd of this year." So we'll be taking just this particular string of words. The instrumentalities used in this act is spoken English with serious key. The speaker likely tries to evoke the norm of established formula for factual description in legal domains when he begins his talk with the exact factual date, which is probably why he's saying on April 3rd of this year. So you want to be factually correct, and the speaker, by referring to some past event, brings about a change in the scene. The setting, however, remains the same. Now we'll go on to the sixth sentence, which is again spoken by the police officer. It goes like this: Miss Quested and Mrs. Moore were invited to a tea party at the house of Government College's principal. So here, no other instrumentalities except spoken English with respectful serious key are used. Following the English norm, the title Miss and Mrs. are used to address and show respect to an unmarried English lady and a married English woman respectively. The speaker invokes Mrs. Moore, a participant who is not present. There is no mismatch between message form and its content. Neither there is any incongruity between norms of the speaker and the hearer. However, the Indian participants may not identify with the norm. Further, a tea party may not be normative to the Indian participants, and therefore a fuller appreciation of what constitutes a tea party may not be reached by them, because Indians are not familiar to the concepts of tea party or addressing married women as Mrs. and an unmarried woman as Miss is probably not so familiar to the Indians, and hence they may not fully appreciate what has happened. Now again we'll be looking at the sentence delivered by the police officer, which goes like this: Here the prisoner first met Miss Quested, a young girl fresh from England. Until this party, the prisoner had never been so close to an English girl. So what happens here is that the speaker uses spoken English with serious key as a message form, while the declarative forms the instrumentality. The intention to use this message form is to evoke the underlying content of establishing guilt of the accused. The speaker brings forth the norm that it is thought inappropriate and beneath the dignity of the whites, particularly white women, to be in the company of the Orientals. The real content of the message is not in harmony with its form, since what the speaker is trying to emphasize is that a young white girl will be an object of desire for the Oriental men. This understanding is not captured by the declarative nature of the officer's speech. As such, the speaker is relying on rhetorical aspect of speech. The allusion is to the past events and therefore leads a change in the scene of the event. Next, we will look at sentence number 8, which is again uttered by the police officer. In consideration of the ladies present, I'll merely allude to the fact. So we'll be taking this particular sentence spoken by the police officer for our analysis. So here what happens is that again the speaker uses spoken English with serious key. The message content evoked by the form are excuse and circumvention. This speech is a reminder of the fact that it is normative in the presence of women that the certain talk considered as inappropriate should be avoided, or strategies to circumvent it to be used. The speaker is trying to rely on euphemism to prescribe certain use of language which falls under the domain of taboo. Then we have sentence number 9, which is again spoken by the police officer, which goes like that he is a widower living alone. So now here again the police officer is using spoken English with serious key. The speech is declarative but is used to establish guilt by exploiting the social belief that a widower has sexual desires to be fulfilled, which is why he is saying that he is a widower living alone. This proposition is not parallel to the ends expected by the accused and the Indian participants, but it is in accord to the prosecution and to other English participants. Now remember that we had mentioned it earlier that the goals or the outcome, the ends of each participant in a speech event can be different. So here the ends, while the police officer is saying this particular sentence, the Indian participants do not expect it. However, the British or the English participants do expect this kind of an end. Then we have sentence number 10, which is again spoken by the police officer. In presenting our evidence, I'll provide ample proof of his state of mind. Again, spoken English with serious legal key is used both as instrumentality and as message form. It is used to prepare the ground for arguing and establishing guilt of the accused. Registers like proof and evidence suggest to the legal genre of the event. Such a use of speech also highlights the norm that proof and evidence are admissible to the court of law rather than unsubstantiated opinions and beliefs. So precisely every single word and every single action you make or you do consciously or unconsciously are relevant in a speech event. Now we'll move on to the next sentence. Before going through the history of this appalling crime, I want to state what I believe to be a universal truth. The darker races are attracted to the fairer, but not vice versa. So now here, when he says that the darker races are attracted to the fairest, but not vice versa, the police officer's tone is he's slow, emphatic and determined while saying this. So he's trying to convey his idea. He's trying to establish this. The speaker uses spoken English with proverbial seriousness as key. It is used to render his arguments acceptable, and the genre that the speaker tries to evoke is proverbial, since the hue he provides to his opinions are presented in a fashion similar to a proverb, but in a fact-like manner by using a declarative. In so doing, the speaker also attempts to convince the jury about the guilt of the accused. There is an evident conflict of ends of various participants. We'll now move on to the 12th sentence delivered by the defense lawyer, and it goes like this. Even when the lady is less attractive than the gentleman, so this is a question, and here again the instrumentality of spoken English evokes a sarcastic key in the speech act. The form of the message is a question. The content evoked, however, is sarcasm and disagreement with the police officer's proposition. It also serves to mock the belief and absurdity of such an opinion held by the officer in particular and the English in general. The genre evoked in this speech act is that of a joke, and as a consequence induces much laughter and mirth among a section of participants who do not concur with the proposition. However, given the differential goals that the various participants seek in this speech event, the English participants find this speech act disgusting, as is evident in their non-verbals. The judge, on the other hand, given his concern for the ends and to maintain and enforce the norms of the setting, is also irked by the fuss created by the laughter, which is reflected in the following speech act. Now, soon after this, laughter in the courtroom, the judge says order, and he pounds the hammer. Two message forms, apart from kinesis, proxemics and facial expressions are used in this speech act, namely spoken English and nonverbal hammer pounding, both of which are used to issue order to maintain silence. The key is serious and legal. Hammer pounding, together with speech is used as a norm to control the behavior of the participants. So he pounds a hammer and then he says order. So both the hammer pounding along with speech is used as a norm to control the behavior of the participants. The norms evoked are the assertion of authority, order to maintain calm and silence in a court of law. The norm is challenged by one section of the participants and is violated by their rupture into cracking laughter. The text concludes by the laughter of the Indian audience. They keep laughing and clapping their hands in the courtroom. So the instrumentalities and message form used a vocalic, non-verbal facial expressions and gestures. The content meant to be evoke a humor and mocking. Further, it is likely that it might be used to subvert and challenge the foreign rule of law in specific and enslavement of India in general. For when evoked in a court of law, it serves to mock and is a display of violation of authority of the institutions maintained by the colonial rule. And the genre here is humor. By analyzing this particular speech act, I hope it helped you in understanding the difference between a speech act, speech event and a speech situation. Also with this particular illustration, we also learned the relevance of various speech components in a speech act, such as setting, scene, norms, ends, genre, keys, etc.
Summary. So you have listened to the detailed discussion of speech event analysis. In this module, there has been an attempt to analyze a speech event which consists of people from two socio-culturally and politically different communities. This speech event analysis is of an English Hollywood movie, A Passage to India, based on E.M. Foster's novel by the same name. In talking about speech event analysis, it is necessary to see that it has several components and how these components can all be separated and analyzed in the course of the analysis, speech event analysis of different linguistic texts.